It's that time again.
Yep. We are Team Wester.
And you are the most important thing to us.
Team Wester
Podcast. It's all about the team.
Welcome to another edition of the Team Wester podcast. I'm Brad Gelber, and I'm actually joined today by a very special guest, Buffalo long snapper Reid Ferguson. Reid, thanks for being here today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it. And I guess I can say thank you a few more times throughout this year because you have asked me to co-host the podcast throughout this season. So very much looking forward to it.
Yeah, we're really excited to have you. And Reid stole the thunder there already, right out of the gate, the surprise. But yes, Reid is going to be joining us as a co-host for the football podcast this season, and we're super excited. Obviously, we had you on the podcast last year, I believe, and it was really cool to just get to know you a little bit, get to know your story. And we were just thinking throughout the year when we wanted to kind of, change things up a little bit, keep it fresh. How could we do that? And it was, why don't we bring in a inside-minded football perspective? And we couldn't think of a better person than you. So you just kind of fit the ideals of Wester and the Team Wester concept. So we're super excited to have you this season.
Yeah, I appreciate that very much. Thanks for the kind words. But I'm looking forward to it. We're gonna have a lot of great guests on. Some of my teammates, maybe some other guests thrown in there as well. And I have a little bit of experience with the podcast thing. Not so much. With the camera deal set up here, mostly just sitting in my home office with, chatting it up with my brother on our podcast. But I'm excited to kind of expand my I guess experience in the podcast world and actually co-hosting with somebody who's not my brother. So I'm very, very much looking forward to it. It's gonna be great.
Yeah. So that podcast called After the Snap, and for people that don't know, your brother is the long snapper for Miami. So you guys kind of have long snapping in your blood there. And I know we talked about this last time you were on the podcast, but maybe just give us a little snippet about what that podcast is all about and kind of how that came to be a thing.
Sure. So we started a couple years ago. I think it was the spring of 21. And we kind of just, hey, let's we had heard from a lot of people that wanted to hear our stories, wanted to hear opinions on football, wanted to hear just various our insights on various sports topics, whatever it may be. So that's kind of how we launched it. It was kind of talking about what was going on with our own teams, but also we talked a lot about like some of the early days of the NIL stuff with college football, just a lot of various topics that were kind of going on at the current time, but also kind of longer topics throughout a football season or throughout an off season or free agency or whatever it might have been. And we love doing it. We took a short break after we had my wife and I had our second kid. It was a little tough. One kid was challenging enough to find an hour and a half, 2 hours to put into recording a podcast and doing the social media and all that kind of stuff. But I think we're going to kick it up again for this season. So we're excited. It was an exciting venture to start because neither of us had ever done something like that. So it presented some of its own challenges. Yep. But we've also seen a lot of good coming from it too. So, and we have some good support, some loyal listeners. So it's been great. And it's exciting.
What about doing a podcast with your brother? Because family, it's a little different. You wouldn't maybe say things to me that you would say to your brother. So in terms of that whole thing, especially since you both play the same position, you're both professional athletes, what's that whole vibe? Is it you give them a hard time, you give each other a hard time a lot? What's that been like doing that?
Yeah, it's you pretty much hit it on the head. Sure. There definitely are some jabs in there, especially twice a year when we play each other. And for the bulk of his career, it's been, us winning those games. So it's easy, it's easy to look forward to getting on the mic with him every week, right?
You win too.
But then after you win the game, you're like, I can't wait for this one, right? You've got an hour lined up of just straight stuff you could talk about just the game. But we try to kind of we have a snap of the week, stuff like that we try to cover league wide stuff. Doing a podcast with your brother definitely is different than what we're doing here. In more ways than one, but it's great. He loves it. I love doing it. And like I said, it's been fun.
Have you found that, since long snapping is a bit of an art, as you've said before, it's not as common perhaps as, other positions within football. So have you found maybe that you have younger kids aspiring to play that position that maybe listen to the podcast or reach out to you guys because they kind of see you and think, hey, like, I want to do that? Sure.
I think it's, it's a mix of two things. I think, first off, you're seeing kids that, I would say in the past decade or so, you've seen a number of NFL snappers kind of put their name on a map on the on podcast side, like the entertainment. The NFL is an entertainment business, right? But you're kind of seeing a lot of snappers kind of build their own brand publicly, whereas it was, when I first started out, and it still is, you want to kind of like the nature of the position is I used to say, if nobody knows who I am, I'm doing my job right. That's true. While that is true on the football field, like if I go out there and on a Sunday afternoon and I'm snapping 10 to 12 snaps and they're perfect and we make all the kicks and the punts are good and nobody notices anything wrong, mission accomplished, right? But on the flip side, you're thinking about doing stuff off the field. You want brand deals. You want to do stuff after football in the media or whatever it might be, and you want to build your brand doing a podcast, doing TV show spots, whatever it might be. You're seeing more snappers kind of put their name on the map and do stuff like that. So I think that part A is to answer your question is attractive to the young kids because I think that is more attractive in that kind of generation that's upcoming right now. And then the other side of it is the injury aspect of it, right? You see, that's been a hot topic for, a number of years now, probably the past couple of decades, I would say, all kinds of injuries across, we always say in the NFL, there's a 100% injury rate. Everybody gets injured. I've been injured. I missed a preseason game a couple years ago, had a back injury. Like it happens. And so, but at this position, if you stay healthy, you can last a long time. Sure. Same goes, generally speaking for kickers and punters as well. Just specialists in general have a lower injury rate than a lot of the other positions. And I think that is an attractive, an attractive spot for kids growing up that say, I want to play in the NFL. I want to grow up and be a professional football player. They might look at doing snapping or doing punting or kicking or, trying their hand at a specialist position because you can make a good living for yourself and play for many years if you're good at it and you stay healthy. Yep. And so I think that's, I've talked about that with parents of young kids before, and it definitely is a thought for those parents that are putting their kids into football, in elementary school or middle school. So those are probably the two best ways that I can answer. Yeah, for sure.
For sure. And then, like you said, if everything goes right, but on occasion, I remember last year there was a big hit you had on a play that took Twitter by storm. Sure. So occasionally you have to be the last line of defense and make a football play. And you're still a football player. Yeah. So when needed, make the play.
Yeah. I mean, towards the beginning of my career when I was kind of, cause it's different because in college, a lot of teams, the snapper doesn't have to block. They have no protection responsibilities. There's different rules in college when you can release downfield, so it affects the punt unit as a whole. But when you get to the NFL, every team runs the pro style punt. You have to be able to protect, and then be able to be a factor downfield as a snapper. So, my thought process was when I'm training, I can, when I'm working on the snapping, like the snapping is the art in itself, but after the snap, no pun intended, after the snap, after you block your man, after you fulfill the first two duties, which are the most important job of a snapper on the field when you go out there for a punt. Without a good snap and without protection, there is no punt. After those first two things, you basically turn into a linebacker. You're running downfield. You've got to fill the holes. You've got to kind of read what's happening and possibly make a tackle. So a lot of my training, the past 7 or 8 years has been training sort of like a linebacker does, from a strength and speed standpoint, and just kind of upping that part of my game. And it's like you said, it's benefited at least a little bit. The past couple of seasons, I've racked up a few tackles. So that's the fun part of it. I wish that hit that you were referring to in the Denver game didn't come after like a 25-yard return. Sure. But it was still a nice, I guess a nice highlight to have in the bag.
Do the guys get fired up when, I would imagine? Yeah. So when you come off the sideline after a tackle?
They were happy for me. I mean, that's like, I remember talking to my brother after the game, because I think it was a Monday night game. Yep. They weren't playing, so he was watching, and I talked to him after the game. I was like, dude, I've been waiting 8 years, like since I got in the league, to make a hit like that. Yeah. Like it felt great, and it felt like a culmination of like all of my training coming to a peak there. But yeah, no, it's fun when that happens, and when you kind of see your hard work pay off in a game.
For sure. In terms of the off season, obviously that's, where we're recording right now. You're in the midst of the off season. Any fun plans that you've been enjoying? I know, Buffalo fans are always, what are the guys doing when they're not playing? What's going on in the off season? So what's the off season been like for you so far?
Yeah, it's been great. My wife and I, we spend off seasons in Texas, kind of bouncing around. We like to travel. But we're, obviously back in Buffalo now for OTAs. We started a couple weeks ago. So, it's a lot of taking care of the kids. We went to Disney. We visited some family, took a couple trips. So it's been great. Planning to go to the beach this summer. Yeah. We have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. Our 3-year-old, we got 2 girls. Our oldest girl, what used to not be very fond of the beach. Yeah. I think she has kind of taken to it a little bit now. So hopefully when we go this summer, that'll be great. Our 1-year-old, or almost 1-year-old, she has not experienced the beach yet. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, we'll see.
Maybe the second time around it will be a better experience, hopefully.
Sure.
But if not, I'm more than happy to hang out with her at the pool all day long. Yep. I am more of a pool guy than a beach guy myself.
No
my
sand
wife,
all over everything.
My wife would probably sleep on the beach if she could. So that'll be fun. Looking forward to that. But as far as being up here with the guys right now, doing OTA stuff, we're working out, we're meeting, we're starting practice here in a couple weeks, and that's kind of the morning shift, if you will. And then we kind of just have the afternoons to ourselves, and we get the weekends off. So traveling home to see family, when you can, playing a lot of golf with the guys. A lot of golfers on the team, which is fun. Kind of gives guys an outlet to maybe hang out with guys that they normally wouldn't hang out with in the building. Yep. Kind of connect off the field a little bit and build that camaraderie. So that's been a lot of fun too. But yeah, no, it's, there's aspects of the off season that I look forward to every year, and building like this part, you're kind of starting fresh every year. We lost some guys in free agency. It happens, it's the nature of the business. There's always going to be a little bit of turnover every year. But kind of, learning those new faces, meeting those guys, and kind of starting to develop those relationships is one thing, one aspect of the off season I look forward to every year. So it's been a great off season so far, and more to come.
Yeah. In terms of golf, I got to ask you, because everyone knows about Josh Allen, and he loves golf, great golfer. Who's maybe a guy on the team people wouldn't expect to be as good of a golfer as they actually are?
I would say all three of the other specialists, not myself. I'm not good. I'm like a 19 handicap.
Okay.
But T-Bass, Sam, and Matt Hawk are all very good golfers. Okay. T-Bass, I would say, is probably the best of the group. Oh. I think he played in a Pro-Am last weekend somewhere down in Georgia. But we all play together a lot, and it's a ton of fun, like learning from those guys. I've only been playing for a couple of years, but like learning from those guys how to play the game, I guess, is a lot of fun for me. So that's one thing I've enjoyed doing with those guys for the past couple of years.
And, in terms of something else, when I think people think of you, is perhaps, the phenomenon behind Grills Mafia, right? So for people that don't know, it's kind of a play, obviously, on Bills Mafia. And kind of, I know you explained it before. You've probably explained it a lot of times. But how did it start, and, how did it turn into this bigger thing than just, a fun Twitter thing that you guys had?
Sure. Yeah, great question. So I think it started maybe spring of 21. We stayed up here in the off season. My wife was pregnant with our first, and I was just kind of sitting at the house, and a lot of the COVID stuff was still going on. I couldn't travel, and we were just like, hey, what do we? It's February. It's 20 degrees outside. Right. What can we do to kind of fill our time? And I had a smoker and a grill up here, and I was like, and I've always had a passion for it. Yeah. But it's like diving deeper, trying new recipes, like really getting creative with a lot of the stuff that I was trying, that we would want to do for dinner, or, whatever, smoke something overnight or all day long or whatever it was. Excuse me. So I just started kind of throwing stuff on social media, and just seeing what stuck, and people loved it. They loved, whether it looked really good or it looked bad, they were eating it up. No pun intended. Yep. And I don't remember how the Grills Mafia hashtag came along, but we just started using it, and it caught on, and people loved it. And so I think it was maybe later that year, at the end of 21, I was talking to a buddy of mine. I was like, hey, do you think you could help me out? Making it into a business, but we donate a lot of the money to, it's kind of like, I've had some trouble explaining it to people, because I'm like, I don't want to, I don't want it to be like, hey, I'm profiting off of, this thing that you guys are trying to have fun with. Right. We've donated a lot of money to veterans-based charities, food-based charities here in Western New York, with a lot of the stuff that we've put out over the years. So T-shirts, hoodies, we've got some fun logos, some great and fun logos, and then we're coming out with some grilling tools and cutting boards and stuff like that we're putting out too. So it's been great. I get people that tweet at me and Instagram stuff, stories and stuff, that post just about every day, and they'll tag me and stuff with Grills Mafia, and it's been great because I've been able to kind of parlay that love for grilling and the love for the community, the grilling community, into a partnership with Q42. Yeah. I know you were going to bring it up, but it's a local barbecue company here in Western New York. I knew the owners, Iman and Bridget, for a couple years, and they asked me last year to kind of join the club. Yep. And I thought it was a no-brainer. I always thought I wanted it to be a goal to kind of have a seasoning, or some sauces and rubs and stuff that I could kind of be a part of. and they asked me to come join the team, and it's been great. We've got a couple seasonings out right now and a couple sauces as well, and coming out with a new one here soon for the summer. So it's been amazing. It's been great. We had our first barbecue competition that we sanctioned last year, and it's been a great success so far. It's been a lot of fun.
Well, hopefully now that you're on the show, we'll be able to like get a secret taste of some of this stuff.
That'd be, yeah, I could
pretty awesome.
We could do a podcast one day, maybe from the patio.
That'd be great.
Like grilling.
All right, you heard it.
We're gonna do it. I think that would be great. Yeah.
So one thing I did want to kind of, as you said, parlay into is you have another love in the food realm. It seems is you're a big advocate of Raising Cane's, right?
Oh yes.
So for us Northerners, maybe that aren't familiar with this, like what is it? What's the big deal?
Yes.
Like you and your brother, I see on social media, you're like, you guys don't know what you're missing. You're advocating for. I think Reggie Gilliam was like on your team too. So like, what's the whole thing behind this?
It's okay. So I grew up in Georgia, and we had Zaxby's. Have you had Zaxby's?
I've heard of it.
Okay, so it's similar. It's chicken and fries. They've got like some salad stuff, but basically it's a chicken and fries restaurant. And so that was kind of the one we grew up knowing, and I love Zaxby's. It's great. But when I got to LSU, there's this, I had never had it before, but Raising Cane's, the original location is right on campus, right outside like the north gate of campus. So I grew to love Cane's over my 4 years down there in Baton Rouge. The founder, Todd Graves, is from Baton Rouge as well. So he's obviously grown the business, and it's extremely successful now. But it's probably, I guess it's my favorite restaurant, probably my favorite restaurant, right? Like I love Raising Cane's. So I've been on this multi-year, I don't even know what you would call it, a mission to try and get one up here in Western New York. So at least in the Buffalo area. Of course, I'm sure the first one they put up here will probably be up in like Rochester or something, right? So I would still drive to go up there to get it. I think the closest one right now is in Cleveland.
Okay. So
2.5 hours away. I've thought about it a couple times.
I was going to ask, have you done the drive?
Maybe I could go down there and eat it.
Yeah.
But no, it's like 70. It's like 80% serious, 20% like a joke,
fun.
Right? Like just for fun. I'm like, this is fun.
Yeah.
Can we get a Cane's? Like, can we do that? Like, can we pull the trigger on this? But they've like over the past couple of years, they've slowly been expanding. I think they've got a couple locations in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
They're obviously in Cleveland.
So they're on their way.
They're in New York. They're in Times Square.
Okay.
I've eaten at that one last year when I went to do my little spot on Good Morning America. But they've got to just keep going. Just keep going. I know. The funniest thing somebody told me was Cane's has a location in the Kuwait airport.
Okay.
Like,
but not Buffalo.
We love our chicken up here, right?
There
like
you go.
Buffalo people love
Makes
their
sense.
chicken, fingers, tenders, wings, whatever it is. They love their chicken up here. Like, can we just one more restaurant?
Yeah.
There's plenty of space for one more chicken restaurant up here.
Have you thought about possibly being like the franchisee and trying to open your location? Be like, hey, I'll take part in this thing if you
trust me. If they don't franchise, unfortunately, if they did, Reggie and I would have been all over this like 3 years ago. So yes, unfortunately they don't franchise, but fingers crossed, someday we will be able to bless the area with some Raising Cane's.
I have to ask you one more thing about that. So when you have away games, right, and you guys like look at the schedule, are you like seeing which ones have Raising Cane's, or is that like a secondary?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it kind of depends on like where we're staying. We don't always stay in the same hotels wherever we go, but I can't remember where it was. I think it was maybe the Philly game this year or this past season. Reggie and I found a Cane's that was like 15 minutes from the hotel, and we Ubered over there and ate, and it was amazing. So It was a afternoon or a night game.
Yep.
So we were like, we can eat, we can do the Canes. We still have
time.
If it was a 1 o'clock game, I
Yeah.
probably wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
But for like a later afternoon dinner, a night game, I'm like, we can do this. We can do this.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Well, thank you for explaining that because
Yeah.
as an outsider just reading it, you want the inside scoop. So now I feel
It's
like
great.
we have
And
it.
so and for whoever out there, if you are listening to this and you want to go, maybe you don't live in Buffalo, maybe you want to get Raising Cane's wherever you live and you haven't, you can get either a box combo, which is 4 fingers, or a caniac, which is 6 fingers. That's what I eat when I go. I don't go a lot because it's not healthy at all. And you've got to like, anytime that I'm playing, it's definitely a cheat day meal. Anytime I tell my wife that I'm like, let's go get Cane's. I have to plan it ahead. I have to do it like lunch the next day because I'm like, I have to work out that morning to make myself feel like I've even earned the opportunity to eat this meal.
Right.
So if you can get a box combo or a caniac, 4 or 6, and make sure I'm not a fan of this it comes with coleslaw.
Yeah,
I always do no
either.
slaw.
Okay.
A lot of people do no slaw, extra toast.
Okay.
But make sure you do the toast, butter on both sides.
All right.
So you can just ask for some Bob toast.
Okay. They should just make it the Reid Ferguson.
The Reid combo.
There you go.
Let me jot that down.
All right, so we could spend the whole time talking about food, but I did want to get to football here a little bit too.
Sure.
So obviously, we just had the NFL draft for people that may be watching or listening. The timeliness of this, we literally just had the draft. So I was curious. I kind of talked to you before that we started recording here, but in terms of actually watching the draft, like I'm sure every guy's different. Do you watch the draft? Do you watch all 3 days of the draft? Are you one of those people that have to sit there for the whole thing? You just check in periodically.
Yeah.
What's your viewing habit?
Yep. So I'm not like a researcher.
Sure.
I know a couple. I know a handful of the top guys coming out.
Sure.
At various positions, mostly the LSU guys. That's kind of just following them throughout the past college season. But I am very much a fan of the NFL as much as I am a player. I watch just about every primetime game during the season. If we play a 1 o'clock home game, I'm coming home and I'm turning on the afternoon games. Like I love just watching the game.
Sure.
And learning and maybe watching somebody we're playing the next week or whatever it might be. So I was traveling home Thursday evening when the draft was on, watching it on the flight and just enjoying. I guess it was cool. So we were picking at 28, right? So I would have air quotes. I would have really appreciated a heads up.
Yep.
So I maybe didn't have to stick around for the whole 5 hours.
Yep.
Maybe could have just read a recap on
next
Friday
day.
morning.
Yep.
But no, it was fun to like watch. The fascinating part for me is the teams that traded up.
Yep.
Every year, trade up or trade back, and the value of what that costs.
Sure.
Right. Mostly, you see picks for picks, right? You don't see a lot of trade ups that include a player. It's just fat and like. I don't think I want to be a GM someday. I don't think I'll ever be qualified to do that. But it's fascinating from just somebody who doesn't know.
Right.
But I'm in the building.
Right.
It's fascinating for me to just observe, like, okay, this team A wants to trade up 8 spots.
Right.
Like, what does that cost?
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
If you're trading up into the top 10, like there's a premium on that pick, right? Or if you're trading, if there's more, there was like 6 quarterbacks taken, right? In the first like 13 picks or something. I'm sure that there was a extra premium tied to those top 10 picks for teams outside the top 10, like Minnesota did.
Sure.
Right. So it's fascinating for me to learn. Okay, you want to trade up. We want your first round pick, and we want a second and 2/4 or whatever it is, whatever the calculation ends up being. Right. That is like one of the oddly more fascinating parts for me, just from like an analytical standpoint of things. But to answer your original question, I was locked in.
Yeah. It's interesting. I was just reading something and I forget back to I think they were showing one when Ricky Williams, the Saints traded for him back then. They basically traded their entire draft.
The whole
for
draft.
Him. It was like multiple first round, second round, third. And I was alive. I remember watching it, but I don't remember that. And then looking back on, like you said, the value they put on it. And back then, running back was probably more aligned with how we view possibly quarterbacks now in terms of the importance. So it made a little more sense, but still to give up your whole draft for the opportunity at one player that you don't know for sure is going to work out that's a pretty ballsy thing to do.
Yeah. That's, I think if social media was around when that trade dropped, I think it probably would have crashed the website, right? Like that would have been crazy, but.
So, something else I think you kind of alluded to, but just in terms of like the mock draft thing, I remember, I think you were kind of poking fun on social media about that. Like, there are people who that's kind of their job, is all they do all year is mock drafts. And then there's other people that maybe do them as we get closer to the draft. I always joke around, like, I'm starting my mock draft for the next year, like the day of the draft, because I don't actually do mock drafts. But do you follow any of these? Do you ever read any of them just to kind of see what people have Buffalo doing in the draft?
Yeah, I really just see like what pops up on my Twitter timeline or whatever. It's over the year. Like I remember the first time that I went back and like looked at a mock draft was when I was coming out.
Sure.
Just because I wanted to see who was being taken in the first round that year. And I think I remember calculating, like, I think it was Mel Kiper, and he got like 3 picks right in the whole first round. I'm like, you spent all year.
And no one goes back and
grading, scouting, watching. I don't know if you watch this film. Watching film, talking to sources, and you got 3 picks, right? Or whatever it was, 4 or 5 picks, maybe. It was some low single-digit number. I'm like, weathermen are more accurate than you are. I'm like, weathermen are more accurate than a mock draft guy. I'm like, I totally get it. For the content aspect of it, it's exciting for people to look at. Totally not a knock on anybody that does it at all. I just think that it's funny to take. It's hard for, and I know probably nobody does, right? But it's hard for me to really take a firm grasp on a mock draft. 3 before the combine happens, or like before free agency happens. How could you know what teams need? Maybe they'll sign a guy that you thought they were going to draft. You could probably take a snapshot of all of the mock drafts on ESPN from November or whenever they start them, November through the beginning of April. And how many players were mocked to Buffalo, right? Like 60 different players. Who knows? So many the values change on players. The needs for teams change on players. Trades. One trade could throw the whole first round off of whatever mock draft you're looking at. It's not like so much a dig at people that do them. It's just like you have to take them with a grain of salt, but also like you have to chuckle a little bit at. I don't know how much Mel Kiper makes.
Probably significant.
Probably a lot of money. And you're,
it's all fantasy.
3 picks.
Right. I
don't know. That's the part I like.
I think the people I appreciate are the ones who acknowledge that a little bit, and they're like, well, after the first, typically as we get closer to the draft, the first 1, 2, maybe 3, we know where they're going. Like this year, we kind of had a sense. But after that, I like the guys who are and the women who are like, all right, I'm out. Like my mock's ruined now because I'm out.
How many mock drafts had the Falcons taking a quarterback?
None. Right.
That's what it's like.
Exactly. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I just think it's funny.
So speaking of that, that's actually a good segue, and you already kind of acknowledged in your sense that you wish you had intel, so maybe you weren't hanging around. And I too, because I stayed up and I had to be up at like 6 a.m. the next day. And I remember one of my coworkers jokingly said, "Oh, we're going to stay up. That means Buffalo's trading out of the first round." And I was like, "No, man, don't say that." And then like exactly what happened that day. So, but in terms of like player intel, right? So people, I think, out of everyone maybe on your team, they expect like Josh to have some intel of what's going on, or there's some various like rumors, like does Bean pick up the phone and ask Josh's permission type of thing, which I know Josh even himself has said, absolutely not. Like maybe he gives me a heads up of what we're thinking, but he doesn't ask for my approval type of thing. Do you guys ever get any sort of sense of what Bean's mindset is before a draft or during a draft, or does anyone text you like, "Hey, I think this is what's going to happen" type of thing?
I could probably come up with a really articulate answer that ultimately is just going to say no. I think there was a report like maybe it was from one of Bean's press conferences after they drafted Keon. That Josh liked him. I'm sure they chatted with Josh. I don't know if there's another guy on the team that they're asking or asking to watch film or scouting or showing scouting reports or whatever. I mean, they're certainly not talking to the snapper, but no, I mean it's interesting because we lost 2 receivers. You probably thought anyone could have guessed we were probably taking at least one, especially with the amount of picks that we had. So I'm sure it obviously just made sense for Josh to have some kind of short list of guys that he liked. That would be available at the end of the first round, or I guess if they had maybe decided to trade up or something, whatever. They probably had a short list of guys that he liked, I would assume, but I can't speak for certain. But do other players get intel? Definitely not.
So in terms of you talked about how you watched the draft. A lot of people probably are in like family or friend group chats type, kind of chatting like, "Oh my God, like they're taking this guy." I'm sure like when Atlanta took the quarterback, everyone was freaking out on social media and group chats, whatever. Do you guys have like a specialist chat on the team, or do you have chats with your teammates that are kind of watching it in real time with you type of thing?
I've got some buddies just from college. They have been cheering for the Bills since I've gotten here, but a lot of them are from New Orleans, so kind of New Orleans fans. So it was mostly them talking about who the Saints were picking up. I think they drafted a quarterback too. So it got pretty active when they were drafting guys. But no, it's I probably not. I'm kind of talking to a lot of my buddies that are Bills fans or my family that obviously they go to games. They kind of follow who we're drafting, who Miami's drafting. So it was mostly I was mostly active in the family chat, going back and forth with my brother. So, but no, it's just fun to kind of bounce ideas off people when players are getting taken.
In terms of, welcoming new players to the team. So like, is there any sort of etiquette for like a current player, right, on Buffalo? So, you guys just drafted a list of these new guys, young kids that, whether or not they're your position or not, like I'm sure people follow each other on social media or whatever, but is there any sort of etiquette, like in terms of like reaching out to them in advance, like texting them or following them on Instagram or Twitter or something that you guys kind of go about when it comes to the new drafts?
Yeah, I would say, for an offensive player, since Josh has kind of been face of the franchise, I would assume that he probably reaches out. Maybe a couple other guys reach out if somebody's taken, just to maybe congratulate them or just a quick introduction. I know, we've drafted 2 specialists since I've been here, T-Bass and Matt, a couple years ago, and I reached out to both of them just because who else would, I guess. And I just, as a leader in the room, I just thought it would, it was my place to kind of welcome them in with open arms. I maybe a Instagram follow or something. Some guys do that and hit them up on Instagram. A lot of times now, especially at some of the skill positions, there's these hubs around the country where guys train.
Sure.
You might end up training with a guy that your team drafts, right? And you may have a prior relationship with him. So I know that's definitely happened with in the past couple of years. So it's there. Guys definitely reach out after the draft for sure.
And that kind of led to another question that I had planned for you, was just in terms of, did you happen to know any of the guys that Buffalo took this year, or had you had any prior meetups with them, just crossing paths in the past there?
No, I think we were in the building with when we were in the building the past couple of weeks when the 30 visits were happening. So maybe cross paths with maybe some of the guys if they were here on visits, but no prior relationships. Yeah.
And LSU, though, obviously, that's your school, and I don't believe we took anyone from LSU this year. So do you find, and I think you already kind of hinted at that, but are guys pulling for guys from their schools when maybe you don't know the intricacies of everything about everyone, but if they went to LSU, it's hey, I want another former LSU guy here too.
It's always absolutely. It's always great for your school to be well represented in the league, but definitely on the team that you're playing on, right? So over the years, we've had myself, Kyle Williams was LSU guy, Trey White was LSU guy, a couple other guys kind of scattered in there on the P squad and stuff. But we obviously lost Trey this year, and but we signed two guys that I actually played with at LSU, Lyle Collins and Will Clapp. Okay. So two we lost a Tiger, but we gained two more. So it's been, and I haven't talked to those guys in a long time. Seen them on the field here and there if we cross paths on the field, but it's been good to catch up with them because I haven't seen them in a long time. So it's been cool.
What about for instance, there was a bit made about Dalton Kincaid pushing for Cole Bishop, right? Because they were former teammates together. So that seems even a little more special than just being your school, but a guy you actually physically were close to or played with, and then you end up on the same professional football team together. That has to be pretty cool. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think just a year apart, right? It's not okay, I was in college when senior, right? 3 or 4 years later, it's he was on the team, but we kind of knew each other. I'm sure Dalton and Cole were close, being just a year apart, playing with each other for a couple of years. So that definitely, I'm sure that's got to be pretty cool.
So, we talked a lot about the draft today, and I promised you ahead of time this wasn't going to be an X's and O thing with Reid. But in terms of the overall draft feel, obviously, I wouldn't expect you to come on here and be I hated what we did in the draft. but in terms of your thoughts overall, do you think, were you surprised by some of the guys that were taken, or the positions maybe we went heavier in a position that you thought, you alluded to wide receiver. I think people maybe thought they might pick up a few wide receivers, and they ended up taking one guy and signing a free agent after. But were you surprised at all, or surprised that we moved out of the first round, or kind of what were just your general thoughts on the draft?
I thought it was I thought it was a really strong draft. I thought we grabbed some pieces that are probably definitely going to play a big role for us this year. And I think like any draft, you fill some of those depth spots that needed to be filled, D-line or linebacker, or whatever it may be, defensive back. It was, I think, like you said, I'm not going to come up here and rip it apart, right?
A+ from Brandon B.
A+, from my limited knowledge of the drafting and scouting process in general. It seems like when you fill your needs in the draft and free agency, and you've got guys at every position that you can count on, I think that speaks volumes about the team in general. So
I'd be remiss to ask you though too, when you were drafted, am I wrong or is this correct that the Buffalo moved up to take you? Was that correct?
They did. They moved up in the undrafted process to take me ahead of Washington actually. So it was that was a I can vividly remember the couple calls that I was on with my agent after the draft, and that was a extremely hectic 11-minute time period deciding kind of which route I wanted to go, and thank the heavens that I made the right choice. It's been good.
So one non-draft related thing, and I didn't pre-screen this with you, so if you want to tell me to just get out of here, totally fine. But, the way the season ended last year was obviously like a tough loss with kind of to a team that's become kind of a arch rival, if you will, of Buffalo here. So I guess it's a little twofold. So when you saw that Buffalo traded back in the first round, and it happened to be with Kansas City, what was your thought? Because I know people on social media are like, what the heck are they doing? And I think Bean did a great job of explaining that it's not, you don't really worry about the other team. You're more worried about what you're doing. So were you surprised though that it was Kansas City, or were you kind of just like you were already on the same page with that sort of thing?
I think I don't know. I don't know if I was surprised.
Sure.
I mean, I think when I was watching it, I was my first thought was like, all right, we're trading back.
Sure.
What are we getting in return?
Right.
And just like we were talking about it earlier, from the analytics, like the draft capital standpoint, I mean, if you aren't going to take X player at your spot and you want to trade back, trade back and get what you can. I think we netted a better third round pick or whatever it was.
Right.
We moved up in the third to trade back 4 spots in the first round. So I don't know. It's a interesting thing to look at for sure, especially in the moment. Right. It's very social media was ablaze.
Right. For sure.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing. Sure. Social media is not in charge of the team, probably. So the other part to that was just the question in regards to how the season ended. Obviously, you already kind of termed yourself as one of the leaders of, the specialist room. So, at the end of the season with Bass missing the kick in the playoffs there, I think he took it harder probably than anyone took it, just in terms of like he talked about it at some point that's he doesn't want to let anyone down, that sort of thing. But for you, like I know you were on social media a little bit after, and just kind of people were almost commenting on your social media, telling you to like let Bass know we're here for him type of thing. So like kind of the end of the season, I know it's emotional and all that too, but was that something where you just felt like those are the times, I guess, where your bond with those guys in that room is special? Because like the three of you, at least I know Matt Hack's come back now, but you, Sam, and Tyler seem to have a pretty strong relationship there. I mean, you are like, you lean on your boys and during the highs and the lows, right? Like that's ultimately why you build the culture that you're building, is so you have people there to support you when you need to be supported. And that, it was, like you said, it was a tough end to the season, but would I send Tyler Bass out there for that kick 100 more times? Absolutely. So like I've seen him make that kick a bajillion times, right? Down there in the stadium. So it's I always tell people, like, when you get, we have been, I don't know how many years in a row we've made the playoffs, 6 or 7 years, whatever it is. When you get past even the first round, when you get to that second, we played in the third round once. The difference in those teams to an outsider's perspective, and I'm saying this with the utmost respect because I watch every other playoff game. The difference in those teams is minute, right? At that point in the season, you've played 18 games, whatever it is, plus preseason games. Like, you have grinded out, you have dealt with
your your strengths. You've dealt with your weaknesses throughout the whole season. There's like 4 or 5 plays that change a game, right? And when you get to that point in the playoffs. So did it come down to the one kick? Yes, no. Like, could we have put ourselves in a better position earlier in the game? Sure, maybe. But when your number is called upon, you are expected to perform, and you're paid to perform. Everybody on the, I'm speaking for myself as much as anybody. So it's and like I said, I'd put him out there 100 times over for that same kick, and I know he'd make it the next time. So to answer your question, it was a tough end to the season, but I've known T-Bass for going on 5 years. Love the kid to death, and love him like a brother. And I'll be there for him when he's up here, and I'll be there for him when he's down here, right? So, and that's part of my duty as a teammate and as a leader in the room, and just as a friend in general. So, and that's one of the parts of the game that I enjoy for sure.
So, on a happier note, looking forward to this season, we have a lot to look forward to on the podcast, but just in terms of the upcoming season, when do you actually start getting excited? Like you start feeling all right, we're getting back to football. I don't want to rush summer because you know, Buffalo only gets several super nice months a year.
Absolutely.
So we're finally getting into that
summers
period.
in Buffalo are
perfect.
Elite.
Yes. Right.
I think extremely underrated.
Yes.
Like June, July, August up here is incredible.
Yeah. So I don't want to rush that, but is it towards and I know you guys have different schedules with training camp and things like that. Is it training camp when you start feeling all right, things are coming back? Is it preseason? I guess when do you start feeling all right, we're getting close here?
Probably when training camp rolls around, because it's a little tough during OTAs because you still have your summer break that we get whatever it is, 5.5 weeks or something from when OTAs are over till we report for training camp. So it's probably, when we are checking in, to St. John Fisher up there for training camp is kind of when it's all right, it's go time. And for some guys, it's different. Some guys might be right now, right? They might be getting in go mode, and they're in go mode for the next 11 months or what, 10 months, whatever it is. But I would say for myself, it's probably training camp, because that's when it's all right, for guys that don't live here year round, it's all right, we're here
together
for all right, this is where we're gonna be till the season's over, right? It's not we're not going home on the weekends. You're not going to visit family. You're not, traveling or whatever. It's time to lock in, and probably when training camp rolls around for sure.
Awesome. Well, like I said, we have a lot to look forward to this season on the podcast. I know just to give people a little tease here, we're going to be interviewing a few of your teammates coming up, part of the Team West Herr squad here. So Josh Allen, Deion Dawkins, Dawson Knox, a few of the familiar faces, maybe get Tasker on the podcast here too. So super excited about that. Super excited to have you as part of the podcast. I encourage people to follow along on all the platforms that they can. We're on every social channel imaginable. We're on Spotify, Apple Music, every podcast option as well. So I'm really excited, and thank you again for joining us this season. It's definitely going to be a different perspective, I think, even throughout the year, to kind of get your thoughts on how the team's doing, and give a different voice other than just mine on here.
Yeah, very much looking forward to it, and I'm couldn't be more excited to be a part of this.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Reid. And
Appreciate
thank you guys for watching another episode of the Team West Herr podcast. For Reid Ferguson, I'm Brad Gelber. We'll see you again soon.